SuperTalk studios, and also joining us now, the Attorney General of the great state of Mississippi, Lynn Fitch. Thanks for coming on today, General.
Hey, good morning, Gerard. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me on.
You bet. So, first time we have talked since the Supreme Court of the United States heard arguments in the Dobbs versus the Jackson Women's Health Organization. Wanted to get you on to give us kind of your thoughts from your perspective, how it went, what you can share with us that maybe you're allowed to, that are not being reported in the mainstream news, because it's being reported, as you can imagine, across the spectrum. I think I've read at least 50 articles, it seems like, on it. What about it?
Well, I have to tell you, Gerard, it was a great day for the state of Mississippi. December the 1st will be etched in stone for all of us for Mississippi, and the opportunity to represent our great state in the Dobbs case. Just monumental. I mean, not only will this decision change the state of Mississippi, but it will also change every state. It will be so impactful. But just being there was incredible. And you have to remember, this is truly a rule of law case. This is one where we ask in our brief to return the power back to the states, because as a rule of law, the Constitution gives the power to the people. And for 50 years, we've not had that. And for 50 years, we've had this very jumbled law where it was only in the hands of unelected judiciary. And so we asked them to return that to the state so that we can make those very important, tough decisions ourselves. That means our elected legislators, our elected governor, will be in charge of making that decision on behalf of the people. So exciting day. Like I said, a very proud day for Mississippi to be there. An incredible team effort, too, I have to tell you, Gerard. Amazing work by certainly my entire team, but people that were there, part of the partnerships, team support all the way through. We probably had, I don't know how many thousands of people at the rally. Just an amazing feeling to see people there, rallying together, compassionate, praying, being supportive, wanting to see this egregious law overturned or precedent overturned through the court system and returned back to the states. We probably had 3-1 as opposed to the opposite side there that were there supporting our side that day. And it's just so impactful to see people across our country rally around wanting to change this and return this question back to the states.
I think virtually every justice, if I'm not mistaken, General, commented, asked questions, and so forth. Was there anything that was asked or any comment statement made that I guess particularly stuck with you as just seeming kind of out there, maybe?
Well, I'll tell you, just being in the chambers of the United States Supreme Court is just very humbling in itself. Scott Stewart, the Solicitor General, did a tremendous job, and it went on for 2 hours. This may have been one of the longest court cases in front of the United States Supreme Court ever. But the justices, they were engaged, and recall that there was no one allowed into the courtroom with us. It was only the justices' clerks and then select media. So we didn't have any gallery participants, which I think in a way was very good because it gave the justices, an opportunity to really be focused on the questions being asked, the answers that were being supplied by the respective sides. For us, the questions were very solid. The answers were very solid as well. Why this needs to be overturned, why stare decisis could be moved here. And I thought those were very profound questioning. There were, 3 justices that didn't ask so many questions. And sometimes I think it was the unintended questions that they didn't ask that were not put out there. And I think that I'm not trying to get ahead of what might happen with the justices, but, we had some very strong questions, some very strong answers, or in their answers or questioning that I thought was very positive for our side. The other side pretty much gave the same answers that they have for 50 years. Basically the world's going to come to an end, not a true legal basis on, rule of law or the Constitution or anything along those lines. So I think that was very beneficial to us. And again, the 3 justices that we thought might have a lot of bullet or harder questions or, in attack mode, really were less energetic when the questioning came.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I just mentioned earlier that I've read just a number of articles really across the spectrum of news outlets. I don't know that I've read one yet that didn't come down with the position that something's going to happen here, all the way from complete repeal and overturn to adjustment, at least to the viability aspect of the law that I think was kind of came out in Casey. But I haven't seen anybody yet say, yeah, the plaintiff here really didn't do well. So what are your thoughts about that? I haven't seen anything come out and say, no, I don't think anything's going to happen here. It really was kind of a flop for Mississippi.
No, I agree. I think the way the questioning went, the entire argument was very beneficial, like I said, very straightforward. And I think if you even go back, Gerard, to our brief, again, we very much laid out in our brief, here are the issues that we're interested in talking about, why it needs to be returned to the individual states, why this is truly a rule of law question. Not only did we post it up like that, but we talked about women and children and protecting the sanctity of life. We talked about empowering women. And as you empower women, you can also promote life, that there's not an either-or choice. You can do it along both lines. And so we made the argument early on that it was a holistic perspective to talk about women, where they were 50 years ago, where they are today, and how they can bring these children into the world. And I think that's a very positive angle that the justices looked at. We also had some conversation during the course of that argument about safe havens, which is really have happened over the last several years, so that, you can certainly bring a child and know that your baby's safe and turn it over to a legitimate safe haven, might be a firehouse or something like that. We talked through the course, you heard the justices talk about adoption, and that being a very positive angle and perspective to be taken into account. Justice Roberts on a couple occasions came back and kept saying, well, why isn't 15 weeks the viability line? So it was nice to hear all those conversations. Justice Kavanaugh came in and gave a whole list of different cases where they had already set changing a precedent, which again would be exactly what would be changing here to do away with Roe. Yeah.
Well, even though I think those points were effectively argued, General, really the disposition of a child post-birth shouldn't even enter into this equation, in my view. I mean, it seems like that when we start talking about, there are alternatives, which are true, we should all agree to. But when it comes down to, I guess, just the legal test, that doesn't seem like it ought to be part of it. But was that not, to a great extent, the basis for the original Roe v. Wade decision? It really seems like it was rooted in, this would be terrible because women would have to be taken out of the workforce and it would bomb their careers and all that sort of stuff. It just doesn't seem like that ought to be the question here.
Well, 50 years ago, it was so different, and we have to stop and pull ourselves back into that time frame, and it became sort of an either-or situation, and they weren't looking to empower women. It was either you pick your career, or you pick raising your family. And, think about it. In 50 years, Gerard, women are very successful in the professional workplace. They've been able to balance their family lives and been very successful in that as well. But the real drawback has been the laws have not been able to change because of Roe.
I got you.
And so, look at what has changed in that course. We talk about the maternity leave that's now available that wasn't there so much in 50 years. Paternity leave.
No question.
Wasn't even heard of.
A thing. Yeah, you're right.
So, we have much more engaging opportunities for people to participate, and then again, be in the professional workforce as well as raising their family successfly.
Yeah. Well, and Sotomayor, I guess some of her comments were the most striking to me. It honestly, she looked to me like she was grasping. She was digging for something to kind of hold on to this decades-old standard in law. Unsuccessfully. She was like trying to convince herself, in my view. This is kind of my perspective of it. What were your thoughts on her?
You're exactly right. She, right off of the out of the gate started, and it was a lot of pontification.
Yeah.
And I think she did want to find some justification, but at the same time, it didn't prove to have validity to go with it.
Yeah.
So
weak.
when you wrap all these other strong arguments back to it, you can see that there's just a journey ahead out there. And then when you stop and you add the science in there, Gerard, I mean, 50 years of science,
a lot of change.
And you can see these babies, you can tell their viability, their life. So it's just an incredible opportunity to be in the mix.
You can hang around for another segment?
Absolutely.
All right. We've got Attorney General Lynn Fitch in the studio. We'll talk more about the case and also her department's efforts against hippie. Attorney General Lynn Fitch is our guest in the studio. So, General, you had the arguments. You said 2 hours, which is a long time to be in front of the Supreme Court. What's next?
It is. It was incredibly intense and very strong arguments on our behalf, but it was for 2 hours. So, now we move forward. We suspect that this decision won't be rendered until probably June, the end of June. Again, this is such a monumental decision, and the court goes out of session the end of June. So we'll be preparing for hopefully to receive it at that point, if not before. But, the thing we have to be mindful of, Gerard, is there'll be a lot of things that will happen in a post-Roe world.
Yeah.
And what are we doing in our respective states? How are we preparing? Again, because it'll be a game changer to have this come down in some perspective where Roe has been overturned. And, it's going to be incredible because it's no longer going to be Roe. It's going to be known as the Dobbs case.
Yeah, that's right.
Originating here from Mississippi. But the thing that you're going to see so differently, different states are going to react differently because as you return it to each state, respectively, they're going to have different laws. So you're going to have, wider ranging laws that different states will implement regarding abortions. You'll see some more restrictive in different states. But so it'll be all different when this decision comes down for these respective states and how they handle it.
Yeah, the best analysis I've seen yet on what that could look like a post-Dobbs case decision, let's say Roe is completely overturned, came out of Kaiser Family Foundation, which is probably the foremost authority in the country on public policy with respect to health care, and this would fall into that bucket. But they think that 20 states, if it's overturned, would totally prohibit abortion. That's the way they see it. And then you'll have the other states will have some form of it, as you indicated, that could be, anything to all the way up to on demand in the last month, the last week. I mean, which is crazy in my view, but I think you could see that in some states and everything in between, so to speak. And it's just further, I think, example of how the states are kind of dividing along these major issues, from crime to taxes to regulations and mandates and now abortion. And I think that's kind of the way we are in this country. We're sort of polarized around some of these major issues, and the states are taking sort of their own mark, their own persuasion.
I have to agree with you completely, and that's what has been happening, as you said, on so many issues. Just as you just said, just think about the vaccination issue alone and these mandates.
Yeah.
We've been fighting the good fight to protect all Mississippians, but we've done it, of course, as a united front with other peers, other attorneys general in different states, and how we've been, supporting. And, thankfully, we have 3 preliminary injunctions right now nationwide that have halted these overreaching, mandates on so many levels, because it's affected our businesses, our universities, our hospitals and medical facilities. And, that's inherently wrong to reach over into people's lives and, into their careers, because this Biden administration has chosen to do that without any regard of people and businesses.
Yeah, and you've got the governor of New York who took over when Cuomo stepped down or was forced to step down, but she's already implemented late last week a statewide mask mandate. You got the mayor, de Blasio, of New York City, which has a population of 8 million. I mean, it's a big city, is implementing private sector vaccine mandates because of the injunctions against the Biden mandate coming out of the White House. So You're not likely to see that, and you contrast that to the red states. Governor DeSantis, et cetera, is probably the prominent one that seems to be always kind of first out, leading the charge for freedom and liberty. And so what a contrast that is, in my view. And it just seems like that's kind of where we are. But we appreciate your efforts and your office's efforts to fight back against Biden and this overreach.
Well, thank you. We saw it coming, and we prepared, and we went to the particular course that we thought would be impactful, and then they have all been just that. But it's taken a full frontal attack against this administration. You know, as Republican AGs, we have sued this administration over 30 times, and we're continuing
30 times?
We have. On big issues.
We're not through a year yet.
That's right. So we've been very busy, but we have to protect our freedoms and our liberties, and they are choosing day in and day out to go after those.
Unbelievable. 30 times. All right, so let's talk about human trafficking. I know that's something your office works diligently on and continuously on. You've been on the program here talking about it a lot. What's the update there?
Well, we have, as you said, we have very much been engaged in human trafficking and fighting this fight. You know, our ultimate goal would be to say that we don't have any human trafficking here in our state. Unfortunately, we do, but we're making a difference. We're making some changes. And, you know, I need to remind all of our listeners, human trafficking is not just, you know, somebody bringing people over here in an 18-wheeler. 50% of these individuals are trafficked by family members or someone they trust. So stop and let that resonate for a moment. That's horrific. You know, these individuals are somebody's daughter or friend or grandchild. It's just amazing. So, you know, what we've been able to do in the last year, we've done with partnerships, certainly our local and private, and it's been incredible. One of our big partners has been the Department of Public Safety, Commissioner Tyndall, and called Be the Solution. And we did that with a number of private sector partners and other public partners as well. And, you know, to get the messaging out there to say, step in, call the 1-800 number, give us that tip, let us check, because it very much could be an individual in need. And that's been very successful. So we are encouraging everyone to be a part, to feel that it's okay to step in and give us some information. We, you know, certainly have been able to engage further with a number of other partners. We have certified investigators. Over 125 individuals have been certified in human trafficking across our state, law enforcement. Well, that's incredible, because now they're out there with best practices they're sharing with their continued respective offices or departments. So everybody's on the lookout now for these predators who are exploiting our children. And
that's what it takes.
Yeah.
You've got to have folks that understand the warning signs, the red flags, and speak up. And there are a lot of that. I was blown away, I got to tell you, Jennifer. We've talked about this before. When I learned what you just mentioned, that at least half of these crimes are committed by family members. They're trafficked by family members. I couldn't comprehend it. I think the average person's perception of this when they hear trafficking is that these are people coming across the border, and these are folks being paid to transport these people. That's certainly happening, but at least half of it is just happening locally with family members. Is that right?
It is, and it's alarming. And I'll tell you, I just was looking at the numbers before I came out here just to give the listening audience an idea. So since the first of the year, we've been able to make rescue attempts for over 106 individuals in our state.
Wow.
But at least we've been able to get to them, to try to help them, to support them, get them to the next step. And as you recall, so when you go into helping an individual, there are so many other things that come with this. Normally there's some substance abuse, because these individuals have had to, you know, become addicted to something to get through their horrific activities that they're going through. And then, you know, we have other partners. Sandy Middleton is a phenomenal partner, and we work with how do we get these individuals to a safe haven, to get them better counseling, better protection along those lines. So there are so many components of this, Gerard, that are out there that we have to be mindful of. We just recently did some operations in November with our partners, our local law enforcement, and some of our federal, and across the state. 49 rescues.
49, golly.
And when you go in, you have to also remember we're looking for also the criminal side of this too. You know, making those arrests for those felonies, those individuals that are trafficking. We were able to, just in this operation alone, arrest 13 folks for child exploitation, human trafficking violations, the felonies, weapons, drugs. So it's this very dark.
Wow.
Circle.
Are we able to get convictions and then incarcerate these that are committing, especially if they're charged with trafficking?
Yes.
Are we making that happen?
We are. I mean, we're making very strong arguments, and you're seeing, you know, that our judges understand now the magnitude. If these particularly young girls, they didn't ask to be in this.
Sure.
And that we've got to help them. We've got to empower them. And so they are being much stronger and giving them much harsher punishment for doing that.
Wow. General, you guys are busy, and we appreciate all of your efforts and that of your staff, and we await to see a decision come down. But I know we'll be talking between now and then, and especially appreciate your office's efforts on this human trafficking. It is horrific. I hate to hear it, and let's help these folks out, and let's put the bad guys away. That's
Absolutely.
what we got to do. Thank
you so much,
Yep.
and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, General. Appreciate you coming on. We'll be back with more Middays after this break. Stay